Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we will try to comprehensively analyze 7 articles in 2 different sections. In the analysis part, we'll first have a comprehensive discussion with respect to the development of artificial intelligence in India, the related challenges, and the way forward. Then, in the second article, we'll have a comprehensive discussion with respect to the process of appointment of Supreme Court judges, including the concept of collegium. Then, in the simplified section, we'll have a look at 5 different articles from a special perspective of UPSC Prelims 2026 along with the value addition. So stay tuned. Coming to the very first topic of today's discussion, this is with respect to the age of AI, challenges and way forward. In the last 4 to 5 years, what we have observed is that there has been an exponential growth with respect to the development of artificial intelligence and the AI related products. And this growth has taken place across various domains, be it the health, be it education, be it the governance, transportation, entertainment. But what we find is that there are certain deep-rooted challenges with respect to the deployment of AI. And one of the most serious challenges is that it basically threatens the overall job market. It is in that light that we have the chief economic advisor who has cautioned the private sector against the possible over-deployment of artificial intelligence tools to the detriment of labor. See, in every job, there are certain tasks which are routine and repetitive. I'm repeating. In every job, there are certain tasks which are repetitive and which are routine tasks. Now, those tasks can be easily performed by an AI-powered machine. If that happens, it would render millions of people jobless. So it's a very serious concern. On the other hand, we have the information technology minister who has said that in order to basically give a spur to the indigenous development of AI in the country, we would procure more than 14,000 graphic processing units. Now we will see what these GPUs are all about. So again, what we'll do is we'll first know what is artificial intelligence, what are the possible applications of artificial intelligence, what is India AI mission, very important, especially from the perspective of prelims. What are the challenges with respect to the deployment of AI and what should be the way forward? Believe me, it's going to be a very comprehensive discussion. Now, it's a part of GS3 technology section. Now, what is artificial intelligence? See, we have this word artificial, which means which is not real, right? Which is not original. So the word intelligence, it is generally associated with humans. Humans have the natural intelligence. When machines basically develop the ability to think like humans, what we call as that the machine has acquired intelligence. And the overall concept is that of the artificial intelligence. That is what you have to understand. So it is nothing but the simulation of human intelligence by a particular machine, that is artificial intelligence. Now, what you have to understand is that let's say we have a particular machine, right? Now, this machine is something which performs a series of steps. You have the data which is fed into the machine, and then the machine would perform certain tasks. The series of steps which are followed by the machines are known as algorithms. Then there are certain computational models which are inbuilt into the systems, what we call as language models. Now, language models, basically, for example, they're used in order to predict the next word in a sentence. When these language models become more advanced and more complex, what we call them, the large language models. That is what you have to understand. Now, you must have used ChatGPT or Gemini. All of them use these LLMs, large language models. And what India is trying to do is, it is trying to build an indigenous large language models. We have countries like US, we have countries like China who have built their own LLMs. And it is on that basis that they have basically won this particular race of the artificial intelligence. So what India is trying to do is, India is also becoming a part of this race and trying to build its own indigenous large language models. Now, see, what you have to understand is that, as I told you, you have this particular machine, which basically on the basis of algorithm and on the basis of these computational models will then process the data, right? So the core thing, the core object of the overall process is the data. That is what you have to understand. Now see, once the machine learns this data, once the machine studies the data, what we call as the process of machine learning. Now, what the machine does in this particular process, it tries to identify certain patterns. What are the identical patterns? Now, one of the very core part of machine learning is the deep learning. Now, what is deep learning? Deep learning basically uses the artificial neural networks. See, there are neural networks which are present in human brain. on the basis of which we process the information and then give a response. Once this particular capacity is gained by the machine, what we call as the machines are working with artificial neural networks. Right. So deep learning uses artificial neural networks in order to have certain tasks. For example, the predictive analytics or cognitive computing, right? Thinking like humans. Now, what the overall gist is that the machine is now behaving like a human brain and then giving me the response. So this is the overall gist. There are varied and a lot of applications with respect to the artificial intelligence, and it is applied in wide areas. For example, the healthcare. Now, in healthcare, we have this imaging. You must be aware of the CT scans or the MRI. The AI is being used in them. Or we have the drug discovery, or we have the advanced diagnosis. For example, we have the IBM Watson Health, which is using the artificial intelligence in cancer treatment. We have the Google's DeepMind's AI, which is being used in detection of the retinal damages in the eye. Then we have the in finance. In finance, it is being used for threat detection. For example, PayPal is using for threat detection or fraud detection. Then we have the education. Now, in education, AI is being used for personalized learning modules or for automated grading systems, for example, GradeScope. Then we have transportation. You must be aware of autonomous vehicles. Tesla is using that. Then we have the Google Maps, utilizing the artificial intelligence for intelligent transportation systems, ITS. Then we have the retail and e-commerce. Now, these retail and e-commerce platforms, for example, Amazon or Flipkart, they are using first for supply chain management to bring in more efficiency, then to know the preferences of the customers. You must have seen once you open these apps, it shows you those products or those services which you are more inclined to buy, right? Next, we have in manufacturing, again, for the overall supply chain, we have Siemens, which is using for predictive maintenance. We have Foxconn, the world's largest electronics manufacturer, which is using the artificial intelligence in order to make the supply chains more efficient. Then we have in agriculture, we have IBM Watson, which is basically using the artificial intelligence to know the effect of weather anomalies on the output of the crops. Then we have in entertainment. You must have seen, once you open the Netflix or any other platform, it shows you those movies or series which you are more inclined to watch, right? Then we have in cyber security for threat perception, for threat analysis, for threat detection, right? So we have dark trace. So these are varied applications. It is also being used in other domains, for example, environment, in space exploration. So it has wide applications. So this is basically an infographic showing how the AI works. So you have the inputs, then it performs the machine learning along with the deep learning, then the neural networks, and ultimately it gives you a prompt response. Now we have this India AI mission. See, what is the very objective? The very objective of this particular mission is to develop our own version, indigenous version of large language models. Right now, we are dependent upon the AI products and services which are primarily sourced from different countries like the US and China. So we need to build our own indigenous large language model. So the very objective is to develop a robust AI computing infrastructure and to focus upon the data quality. See, initially I told you, data forms the core of AI. We need to have data in a form in which the machine can read it. Next, the data should not have errors, because if the data has errors, then definitely the response would also have the errors, right? And develop the indigenous AI technology. So we have the Union Cabinet, which in March 2024 approved this particular mission with a total corpus of around 10,000 crores. Now, the very objective is to enhance the computing capacity by more than 10,000 GPUs, and slowly the government is increasing the numbers of these GPUs. But the question arises, what are these GPUs? Graphic processing units. See, these GPUs, they are primarily the chips, and they are basically high processing data analytics units. That is, high processing data analytics units. Now, with the help of these GPUs, these machines basically learn the data and basically they come up with different models. So that is really very important. In order to have our own indigenous version of large language models, these GPUs are the mainstay, the main pillar, critical for training and building the large scale AI models. Now, again, what the government is trying to do is we have a lot of startups who are working in the AI domain. The government is trying to provide subsidies so that these startups can basically procure and use these GPUs and develop our own version of the AI model, right? So these are some of the very important pillars of India mission. We have the very first is the startup financing. Then we have the innovation center. Then we have the data sets platform. We have the safe and trusted AI. We have the application development. We have the compute capacity, increase the compute capacity, and we have the future skills. You can just have a glance through it. Now, what are the challenges with respect to the deployment of AI? Very, very important. In this article, as I told you, the chief economic advisor has talked about that the deployment of AI threatens the very job market. This is really important to understand. The very first is that it threatens the job market. Displacement of routine jobs. According to a study done by McKinsey Global Institute, what it says is that by 2030, almost 375 million jobs would basically have to be compromised. What it means is that almost 375 million people would have to change their jobs because these processes, the artificial intelligence and automation, would take their jobs, right? So this is a very serious concern. And this number, 375 million, it tunes to almost 14% of the global workforce. So this is a very serious concern. Next, we have the vulnerability of the low-skilled workforce. See, what you have to understand is that in India, we have majority of the workers in the informal sector. And the informal sector, what you need to understand is, most of these workers, they are low and semi-skilled. They do not have the adequate skills. Now, in order to give them the skills with respect to the usage of AI and AI-related products, it is a very tough task. So this is another challenge. Then we have job polarization. See, we have certain highly skilled AI engineers or data scientists. Now, they would be at a quite advantageous positions, right? They would exploit and use the AI to the maximum of the advantage. So they would earn more. Then we have these low and the medium skilled people. They would not be in a position to use the artificial intelligence, the knowledge with respect to the artificial intelligence. And they would not be having the capacity to operate these computers. So there would be a deepening of divisions with respect to these high skilled and these low and medium skills. So it would lead to job polarization, important keyword. Then let's talk about the limited GPU capacity and infrastructure. We already told you that these GPUs, first of all, that it's very expensive. There's a particular company, which is NVIDIA, you must have heard about it. It manufactures a particular chip, which is A100, right? A graphic processing unit. Now, this particular single chip, it costs to almost, in Indian rupees, from 10 lakhs to almost 13 lakhs rupees. Can you imagine? A single chip, prohibitively expensive. So different startups, they cannot really afford these GPUs. Then timely delivery or procurement is again a very serious issue, because we have limited numbers of players around the world who are basically manufacturing, who have the intellectual property with respect to these GPUs. So therefore, timely delivery is also one of the very important concerns. Then data access and quality. See, what you have to understand. What we are trying to do is, we are trying to build the indigenous large language models that should have a capacity to understand the vernacular languages, the local language. That's the first thing. Second thing is that the current data which we have, that is not in a form which is basically accepted by the machine. So you'll have to convert into a form which can be read by the machine. So these are the two important concerns. Inadequate with respect to the development of indigenous AI models. Then limited AI expertise and high costs. We have a shortage with respect to the skilled AI professionals, be it the data scientists or AI engineers. And whenever we have, even if we have these data scientists and engineers, they basically migrate to different other countries because they have good incentives over there, right? So that is a very serious concern. Then high implementation costs. Let's say you have a particular company, a manufacturing plant. It wants to basically become more efficient and it wants to integrate the automation and AI. Now, once it is thinking to integrate the automation and AI, definitely it is a capital intensive tasks. So that requires a money. That's not something which you can do with small amount of money. So that is again a very serious concern. If you have to be efficient, if you'll have to compete with respect to the global supply chains, you'll have to be efficient. And for that, you'll have to integrate these AI and automation. And this is prohibitively expensive for most of these enterprises, especially in a country like India, where we have a lot of these MSMEs who do not have adequate funds with them, right? Then we have the infrastructure deficiencies. One of the major components with respect to the deployment of AI or the development of AI is the data centers. So we need to have robust data centers with us. And data centers, building data centers is again a very expensive task, right? We have the cloud computing, our own system of Aravat, but that is not sufficient. We need to come up with more cloud computing systems, right? Cloud computing so that the AI, the process of AI can be smoothened and can be enhanced. Then we have ethical and integrity concerns. I already told you that AI uses data. Now, we live in a society which has its own biases. Therefore, the kind of data which we'll be using in the machines would have its own biases. Ultimately, the kind of response which machine is going to give would have its own biases. So the response would have the errors. So it is very important to have foolproof data. And that is a very serious concern. We have biases and sensitive and personal data. Again, you must have seen once you open any app, once you install any app, it asks for permission and we just give the tick mark. We agree to it, but we don't read that what all things it is asking. So most of our personal data, it is compromised. You must have seen people were basically converting their images into Ghibli style and they were uploading their personal images. So that is something which is compromising the privacy of the individuals, right? Geopolitical and regulatory issues. We have the production of these chips or AI intellectual property, which is restricted in some of the countries around the world. Very few countries have the IP and the manufacturing capacity with respect to these GPUs. Now, let's say you have a conflict with respect to China and Taiwan. It would definitely affect the supply of these chips to different countries around the world. Let's say we have this trade war between the US and the China. It would again have a negative impact on the supply of these chips. So that would affect the overall outcomes of India in this particular domain, right? Environment concerns. See, these development of AI or the AI processing, it uses the data centers. Now, these data centers, they are energy intensive in nature. They require a lot of energy and they consume a lot of electricity. Not just electricity, but also water. That too pure water for the cooling of the systems. So this is a very serious concern with respect to the overall environment. The process with respect to the development of AI, it's not sustainable as of now. Also, according to the International Energy Agency, what it said, that in the year 2022, these data centers use almost 1.3% of the global electricity supply, and it is set to increase to almost 3% by the year 2026. So again, this is a very serious concern. Now, what should be the way forward? The very first is incentivize the hardware manufacturing. We cannot be really dependent upon these countries like Taiwan or China or other countries. We'll have to come up with our own indigenous manufacturing, the hardware which is used for the overall AI systems. So we already have schemes, for example, the production linked incentive schemes. What we can do is we can expand these schemes to different domains. For example, in cloud computing, for example, the hardware which is used in the data centers. So this is one of the very important steps. Startup support. We have most of these startups who are working in these domains. So they need to be hand-holded. They need to be given the financial incentives. They need to be mentored, incubated. We need to have different accelerators who basically try to handhold these startups. Very, very important. For example, we have the T-Hub of Telangana, which is trying to provide the mentorship support, the financial incentives with respect to the development of AI in these startups. Then we have comprehensive data ecosystem. What we can have is a national data platform. This would provide a centralized data repository. See, data needs to be in a particular form. It has to be standardized, very important. And there have to be quality checks. As I told you earlier, that the data should not have errors. In order to make sure that the data is foolproof, we need to have a particular national data platform, and that should serve as a centralized data repository. Also, we need to work with respect to the encryption of data, so as to make it more secure. You must have heard about the encryption in the WhatsApp, right? Or data labeling. So we know that this particular data is with respect to the social domain. This particular data is with respect to, let's say, the space domain, right? So there has to be a proper labeling, what we call as the catalogs. Next, prioritize the ethical AI. Very, very important. See, there can also be a possible questions in the AI, which basically asks that what can be the consequences with respect to ethical implications with respect to the development of AI or the deployment of AI related products in the country. So we need to have the comprehensive AI ethics guidelines. We have the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence, GPAI, which is trying to come up with a certain framework. So this is really very important. Independent AI ethics boards with regular AI audits. We need to have these third-party audit boards who basically look into this aspect, whether the AI development is being carried in a way it should be, right? It should not digress, right? It should be ethical in nature. Then the AI applications should have the societal impact. Very, very important. Especially in a country like India, where we have our own set of different challenges: poverty, malnutrition. We have the illiteracy. So we need to come up with those AI products which can enhance the overall standard of living of the people. That should be the overall objective, right? So we need to come with these products which basically enhance or rectify these social challenges. AI-driven solutions ensure the equitable access to AI benefits. As I told you, that there can be a possible polarization. There can be a deepening of the society. Let's say you have certain people who know how to operate a computer, and we have the other sections who do not know how to operate a computer. Now, it is but obvious that this particular section who knows how to operate a computer is in a better position to exploit or optimize or capitalize the use of GPT. These platforms like ChatGPT or Gemini, right? And these people would not be able to do so. So it would deepen the differences in the society. What we need to make sure is that the benefits of AI should go in an equitable manner in different sections of society. Then promote sustainable AI. We need to invest in energy efficient AI algorithms and hardware. We need to have these renewable sources of energy which supply these electricity to these data centers. Very, very important. Talent gap, as I said, that we need to focus upon upskilling. We need to make our people ready for the future jobs, future ready jobs. Right? So what we should do is we should come up with different programs. We have the National Skill Development Corporation, or we have the Skill India Mission. It should incorporate one of the very important aspects as AI. Very, very important, right? We can have internships. We can have the research projects in different institutes and faculty exchange. There can be center of excellences which can be set up in different institutes, not just in IITs or NITs, but also in private institutes, right? So very, very important. Also, one of the most important aspects is that of the incentives. There have to be better salaries for these people, data scientists who are working in India, because they already have very good offers from different countries around the world. So we need to incentivize them with proper financial packages, right? So what we see is definitely there are issues with respect to the deployment of AI. It threatens the job market. The data is not in a kind of a form which is required by the machine. Right? There are challenges with respect to the timely delivery of these GPUs. So there are various challenges, but these are the way forward. We need to make sure that the development of AI in the country, it happens on these lines. And again, we need to incentivize these startups. We need to provide them with the adequate finances, adequate hand-holding, right? And there have to be, in addition, a proper framework, ethical framework with respect to the development of AI in the country, right? And then only we would be able to have our own place, what we call as Vishwaguru, in the Industrial Revolution 4.0. Let's have a mains practice question. Artificial intelligence offers immense potential for India's growth, but it also brings significant challenges, especially in the context of employment, ethics, and governance. Discuss the challenges posed by the AI adoption in India and suggest a way forward to harness its benefit while minimizing its adverse impacts. Do write a answer on this question, 15 marks, 150 words. And yes, if you're liking the initiative, do not forget to press the like button, and also let us know in the comment section. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court. So what we have is a particular article which says that the center has cleared the appointment of 3 judges to the Supreme Court. And with this, the court would now function with its full sanctioned capacity of 34 judges. Now, this becomes really important because it involves the concept of collegium. Now, the word collegium is not mentioned in the Constitution. It has been through successive interpretations by the Supreme Court. The interpretation of the word consultation, right, that this particular process of collegium has evolved, so therefore it becomes very, very important. Now, let's first go through the article. The article says that the center cleared the appointment of the 3 judges to the Supreme Court. With this, the top court has reached the full sanctioned strength of 34 judges. The President, after consultation with the Chief Justice of India, was pleased to appoint Justice N.B. Anjaria, the incumbent Chief Justice of Karnataka High Court, Justice Vijay Bishnoi, presently functioning as the Chief Justice of Guwahati High Court, and Justice Atul S. Chandurkar of Bombay High Court as Supreme Court judges. The newly appointed judges are expected to be sworn in by the Chief Justice of India, B.R. Gavai. Now, this is very important. Sworn in by whom? The Chief Justice of India. We'll look into this. The appointment came 3 days after the Supreme Court Collegium forwarded its recommendations to the center. Collegium, another important concept. Now, whenever we talk about the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court, the article which is the most important one is the article 124, which talks about the establishment and constitution of Supreme Court. Now, let's talk about the composition and strength of Supreme Court. Initially, the strength of Supreme Court was that of 8 judges. So we had 1 Chief Justice and we have 7 other judges. Then the Parliament, through various statutory laws, it increased the strength of the Supreme Court judges, right? The current strength stands to be 34 judges, 1 Chief Justice, and then we have 33 other judges. Now, what are the qualifications with respect to the appointment of a particular person as a judge of Supreme Court? So we have Article 124 subclause 3, which talks about these conditions. The very first is the person must be a citizen of India, must have served as a judge of a high court for at least 5 years or 2 such courts in succession. Alternatively, must have been an advocate of a high court for at least 10 years or 2 or more such courts in succession. So this is what you have to understand. Next important point is must be a distinguished jurist in the opinion of President. Now, when we talk about the appointment of a person as a Supreme Court judge, we have this special condition, distinguished jurist. Now, this is not applicable or this is not there with respect to the appointment of a person as a judge of the High Court. Very, very important point. Now, the appointment. So, we have the judges of the Supreme Court. They are appointed by the President. Remember this, under the clause 2 of Article 124 of the Constitution. Now, this is what you have to understand. The word which is there in Article 124 subclause 2 is the word consult. So the President has to consult such number of the Supreme Court judges or the High Court judges as he thinks fit. Now, it is the interpretation of this particular word, consult, which led to different aspects of appointment process. Primarily the concept of collegium. That is what you have to understand. The President consults with the judges of the Supreme Court and High Courts to make informed appointments. Now, see, when we talk about the oath of office, we have every appointed judge must make and subscribe to an oath before the President or an appointed person. This is very important. Generally, the Chief Justice of India is sworn in by the President of India. But what you must have observed is the other judges of the Supreme Court, they are sworn in by the Chief Justice of India. Because it is the President of India who basically delegates the authority with respect to this oath of the other judges to the Chief Justice of India. So the Chief Justice of India is sworn in by the President of India and the other judges are there sworn in by the Chief Justice of India. The oath includes the commitments to uphold the Constitution, sovereignty and integrity of India and perform duties without fear or favor. Now, this is a very important thing. We have the 3rd schedule of the Indian Constitution which prescribes for different oaths. One thing which can be possibly very important for the prelims is that we have the same oath for the Supreme Court judges and the Comptroller and Auditor General. Always remember. So we have the oath 4, which is the form of oath or affirmation to be made by the judges of the Supreme Court and the Comptroller and Auditor General. Do remember. Now, what about the tenure and the resignation part? There is no fixed tenure when we talk about the judges of the Supreme Court. A judge of the Supreme Court serves until they reach the age of 65 years. Do remember. However, a judge may resign before reaching the age of 65 by writing to whom? The President of India. Now, let's talk about the collegium system. See, as I told you, that when we talk about the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court or the High Courts, the collegium systems becomes very important. Right now, we're talking about the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court. And in order to basically, and the Supreme Court at various instances, what it has said is, in order to preserve the independence of the judiciary, it has basically interpreted the word consultation in such a manner that it basically protects from the infringement of the executive and the legislature. You must be aware that we had the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act and the National Judicial Appointments Commission Act, which basically came up with this new framework with respect to the appointment of judges in the higher judiciary. But this was struck down by the Supreme Court, saying that it is infringing upon the independence of the judiciary. So right now, what you have to understand is that it is primarily the collegium, a body of senior judges, which basically gives recommendations to the executive, and those recommendations are binding on the executive. That is what you have to understand. Judges of the higher judiciary are appointed through the collegium system. The collegium consisting of how many people? So right now, when we're talking about the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court, it consists of Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges. Total a 5-membered body decides upon the appointments, elevations and transfers of judges. Now, the word collegium, it is not mentioned If there's a question in the statement in the prelims, it says the word collegium is there in the constitution. It's incorrect. The word is not there. It's not mentioned in the Indian constitution, but has been established through judicial pronouncements. Now, these judicial pronouncements are very important. This is nothing but the interpretation of the word consult, right? In the very first judge's case, what we call as in the year 1981, what it said that you had the primacy which was given to the Chief Justice of India. Now, what the verdict said was that the executive can reject the recommendations given by the Chief Justice of India with respect to the appointment of judges for cogent reasons. If the executive thinks that there are sufficient reasons to believe that these recommendations should not be accepted, then it can reject that. Now, this basically gave the primacy to the executive. That is what you have to understand. It gave primacy to the executive with respect to the appointment of judges. Then we had the second judge's case. It is primarily the second judge's case which came up with this concept of collegium. So, the concept of collegium basically came through the second judge's case in 1993. The Supreme Court introduced a collegium system and it said that the word consultation means concurrence. That is, if the president is consulting with the judges of the higher judiciary, the Supreme Court, right? So that is binding on the executive. That's not just consultation, it's also concurrence. Not just the CJI's individual's opinion, it is consultation with two senior most judges of the Supreme Court. So this is what you have to understand. So it said that it is not just restricted to the opinions of the Chief Justice of India, but also the two senior most judges in addition to the Chief Justice of India. So at that time, it was a 3-membered body. Then we had the third judge's case in 1998. Now this was basically with the aspect of the presidential reference. You must have seen, recently we had the President of India sending a reference to the Supreme Court with respect to the powers of governor or the powers of president with respect to that how the timelines can be enforced. So Article 143 provides for the presidential reference. In this particular reference, the Supreme Court expanded the collegium to a 5-member body. The Chief Justice of India and the 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. Then we had the 4th judge's case, which basically struck down the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2014 and the National Judicial Appointments Commission Act of 2014. Now, the very objective was of the executive and the legislature to basically come up with a framework where it is not just the judiciary deciding the appointment. See, there have been allegations that there has been a possible case of nepotism in the judiciary. So you have the kith and kins of these judges who are being appointed. So there has to be a specific framework. We're not saying that everything was good with respect to the NJSC. No. But we need to come up with a particular process where we cannot give all the rights to the judiciary itself, right? So that is one of the very important points. So we had the collegium system, which basically again replaced the NJSC, and the Supreme Court said that the NJSC is basically unconstitutional. It is infringing upon the independence of the judiciary. Now, the next thing which you must understand or you must have heard about is the memorandum of procedure. See, it is nothing but a list of rules and regulation. That this is the kind of process we are going to follow. So it is the list of rules and procedures for the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court and High Court. It's a document framed by the government and judiciary together. So they came up in and collaborated and ultimately came up with a final summary. The Union government framed the MOP on 30th June 1999. It states that all the appointments of judges to the Supreme Court must be recommended by the collegium composed of the Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. This recommendation is then sent to the central government. The law minister will forward it to the Prime Minister. See, this is the whole process you have to understand. Who would advise the President with respect to the appointment. Then there were other initiatives in order to reform this MOP. So in 2015, the Supreme Court instructed the central government to come up with a new MOP to ensure the transparency in the collegium's working. In 2017, although the MOP was finalized, the government did not adopt it, citing a need to reconsider the matter. So as of now, the kind of MOP which we are following is that of the 1999. So what you have to understand is that we have Article 124, which provides for the appointments of the Supreme Court judges. And then the word consult was interpreted by the Supreme Court through various judges' cases, and this concept of collegium then evolved, but it has its own issues. For example, the non-transparency which is there in the whole process, it's opaque in nature, right? So this is very important. Let's have a mains practice question. What do you mean by the collegium system? Elaborate upon the various cases which led to the evolution of collegium system. 10 marks, 150 words. Do write a particular answer on this question. Let's go to the next section. Coming to the simplified section, we have the first topic which talks about the early childhood education. Now let's talk about the gist of the article. India is one of the largest, most populous countries in the world. And we have a section of this population which is the children from 0 to 6 years of age. Now, what the authors are saying is that the government is not investing adequately when we talk about the early childhood education. But why is early childhood education important? Because that forms the base for the overall cognitive development of that particular child. And that has a lasting impact. That is, if we invest properly in the early childhood care and education, which also includes the nutritional aspect, then that would have a lasting impact on the overall development of the country. So this is what the authors are saying. They're giving different pictures. They're also giving the examples of some of the initiatives taken by the Uttar Pradesh government and the Odisha government, which you can also cite in the examination, the mains examination. Also, what you have to understand is that at the core of this particular early childhood care and education lies the Anganwadi framework, primarily the ICDS program. So we'll be also talking about the ICDS, very, very important. So a child born in India has 1 in 5 chance of being born into poverty. Very important data. You can also quote in those questions which are with respect to the poverty aspect, affecting their health, nutrition, learning and earning potential. The Heckman curve was a powerful economic model that provided a simple yet profound insight. Important. There can be a question in the prelims which says what is Heckman's curve or what it is related to, right? Of the relationship between the age and the rate of return on investment in human capital. Every dollar invested in the early childhood education yields a return that ranges from $7 to $12 with lasting impacts. So it is with respect to the investment in the early education, the Heckman curve. Children who receive quality early education are 4 times more likely to have higher earnings and 3 times more likely to have their own house, right? Yet India's early childhood education system faces 3 major challenges. First, children are not receiving the sufficient instructional time. Adequate time is not being given to them. Nearly 5.5 crore children between the ages of 3 to 6 are enrolled in 14 lakh Anganwadis and 56,000 government pre-primary schools. However, Anganwadi workers spend only 38 minutes per day on preschool instructions. Can you imagine? In the whole day, just 38 minutes, not sufficient, which is far short of the scheduled 2 hours, and only 9% of the pre-primary schools have a dedicated ECE teacher. Just 9%. Can you imagine? Almost 91% do not even have a teacher with respect to the early childhood education. So the state is very sad. The India Early Childhood Education Impact Study found that only 15% of the pre-primary children could match basic objects, a skill essential for letter recognition in class 1. Similarly, this is similar to what we study with respect to the ASER report. ASER report, right? I know you must be knowing which is the NGO which publishes that. If you know, answer in the comment section. So we have the ASER report which also talks about that the kind of gaps which we have in the learning outcomes, right? Similarly, only 30% could identify larger and smaller numbers, which are foundational for arithmetic. Now, the second challenge. The thoughtful optimization of resources for early childhood education remains a challenge. The Government of India spends only 1,263 rupees on a child annually on early childhood education compared to almost 37,000 a student on school education, largely on producing teaching learning materials that are often underused. So first of all, we have less resources. We are not investing properly in the early childhood education, and those resources are even going into the domain of teaching learning materials, which are often unused. There simply are not enough teachers to implement these resources, and therefore there's a lack of oversight. One supervisor is responsible for monitoring almost 282 Anganwadis. Can you imagine? Just one supervisor for almost 300 Anganwadis. To improve the oversight, we need targeted funding to hire more supervisors and dedicated early childhood education teachers. These measures, though modest, promise higher returns. Uttar Pradesh has now moved ahead on the hiring. This is the example which the article is talking about. Hiring of nearly 11,000 teachers, educators for Bal Vatikas in all districts. The state is also organizing a 6-day residential training program for 50 master trainers from 13 districts to train on ECE pedagogy. Odisha has taken the decision to open the Shishu Vatikas in all government schools to make the children in the age group of 5 to 6 school ready. While increased funding would lead to immediate improvements, sustaining these gains depends upon engaging parents. And here comes the third challenge which the authors are talking about. Most parents care deeply about their children's education but may lack the guidance on supporting the early learning. So they're not even aware of how to basically proceed with the early learning aspects. Empowering parents with simple, effective EC practices can make significant differences. For instance, providing worksheets or encouraging their participation in the EC center activities can deepen their involvement. In Madhya Pradesh, the monthly Bal Chaupal program engages with the parents directly by showing them the importance of play-based learning. So it's not just the teacher who are responsible with respect to the early childhood education. There has to be a proper responsibility of the parents also. That is what the authors are saying. The perspective: with targeted funding and increased parental involvement, we can provide our children with the foundation they deserve. By 2047, over 1 billion Indians will enter the global workforce, presenting an unprecedented opportunity to reshape the India's role in a world economy. Strategic investments in EC and engaging parents in their children's learning journey could help 200 million Indians escape the lottery of birth and give today's young learners the chance to become tomorrow's leaders. Almost 20 crore Indians. That is what you have to understand. Let's look at this very important policy, which is the National Early Childhood Care and Education Policy of 2013. With a vision of holistic and integrated development of the child, focuses upon the care and early learning to support the children's all-round holistic development. Now, there are 3 stages with respect to the ages. So we have the different stages: conception to birth, ante and postnatal health, nutritional care of the mother, then birth to 3 years, which talks about the survival, safety and protective environment, 3 to 6 years, which talks about the protection of hazards, healthcare, nutrition, play-based preschool education. This is what the gist of the article is. It acknowledges multiple models of ECCE, early childhood care and education service delivery, that are offered by the public, private, NGOs, through Anganwadi centers, creche, play schools, preschools, and different other instruments. Key areas: universalizing the early childhood care and education and ensuring the adaptive strategies for inclusion of all children, access with equity, quality of standards must be improved, strengthening the capacity of institutions, teachers, and other stakeholders, monitoring and supervision so as to have better policy initiatives, research and documentation, advocacy and awareness generation, and convergence and coordination among different policies and stakeholders. This is what you have to understand. What are the different policies? Very important, I said in the beginning. It's the ICDS, Integrated Child Development Scheme, very important, under Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0. It is an integrated. Now, the very objective of ICDS is to focus upon the preschool education, immunization, health checkups, focuses upon the children from 0 to 6 years of age, and not just the children, but also the pregnant and lactating mothers. So this is what you have to understand. And early childhood care education is an integral component of this program. Objective of the scheme was to improve the nutritional and health status of children in the age group of 0 to 6 years and to reduce the incidences of mortality, morbidity, and malnutrition. Offers a package of services like supplementary nutrition, preschool education, nutrition and health education. Scheme provides a platform in the form of Anganwadi centers. So this is what you have to understand. Then we have PM Poshan, a reformed and revamped version of midday meal. Provides nutritional support to children in the government schools and government-aided schools from the classes of 1 to 8. The government has launched a centrally sponsored scheme, Pradhan Mantri Poshan Shakti Nirman, for providing one hot cooked meal in the government and government-aided school with respect to the children from classes 1 to 8. National Health Mission, the mission was launched in 2013. NHM envisages the achievement of universal access to equitable, affordable and quality healthcare services that are accountable and responsible to people's needs. What you have to understand is NHM is not just restricted to the urban areas. It has 2 components, the urban and rural areas. So it is a very holistic scheme. That is what you have to understand. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to one of the very important components of parliamentary functioning, and that is the Public Accounts Committee. Now, what the article says is, the gist of the article is that we have the undergoing project in Kerala with respect to the NHAI, the construction of the national highways which is going on, and a portion of it basically collapsed. So in that light, we have the Public Accounts Committee, which has directed the Comptroller and Auditor General to look into this aspect and do a proper performance audit and come out with the report, right? So this is what you have to understand. So what we'll do is we'll read about the Public Accounts Committee also, and we'll also see the relation of the CAG with respect to the Public Accounts Committee. Now, days after the section of the under construction 6-lane National Highway 66 collapsed in Malappuram district, Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, headed by Congress leader, important, K.C. Venugopal directed the Comptroller and Auditor General to conduct a comprehensive performance audit. The word used here is directed. Directed the CAG. So it has a power to direct. That is how you'll have to interpret the articles, understand the articles, right? Performance audit, scrutinizing the contract terms and the road design that led to the collapse. It is learned that Mr. Venugopal said there had been multiple complaints regarding the construction flaws in national highways stretches across 7 districts in Kerala. Now, when we talk about the parliamentary committees, first of all, what is the rationale of parliamentary committees? The very first is to provide the expert opinion. Expert opinion. See, we have these parliamentarians who are journalists in nature. But when we basically compose a particular body which comprises of those people who are experts in a particular domain, then definitely they would give a better advice, right? So expert opinion. Second, to ease the burden on the parliament. Parliament already have a lot of tasks to perform. So it eases the burden on the parliament. And the most important thing, second is to ease the burden on the parliament. Third is it basically checks the executive. It scrutinizes the actions of the executive. So it makes the executive more accountable with respect to its functioning. So these are the broad functions or the objective of these committees. Now, parliamentary committees, primarily, they can be categorized into 2 types. One, we have the standing committees, what we call as the permanent committees, constituted after every regular interval, maybe of 1 year. Then we have the ad hoc committees, which are constituted temporarily. Let's say you have the inquiry committees or the advisory committees. Now, in these standing committees, we have the financial committees. And we have 3 types of financial committees. We have the Public Accounts Committee, we have the Estimates Committee, and we have the Committee on Public Undertakings. One of the most important of all the committees is the Public Accounts Committee, which is a financial committee. So this is what you have to understand. It was established in 1921, oldest parliamentary committee, and this was established on the recommendations of Montfort report, right? Through which we had the Government of India Act of 1919. So one of the oldest parliamentary committees, very important. Audits the revenue and expenditure of the Government of India to ensure the public funds are spent efficiently and legally. Key functions: examines the Comptroller and Auditor General audit report on government expenditure, ensures money sanctioned by the Parliament is spent properly, efficiently, right? Investigates the financial irregularities, losses, and inefficiencies. See, understand, it is not just about the money-related aspects, that whether the amount sanctioned was spent or not, whether there was corruption or not. But it can also be, let's say you have a particular scheme where money was spent, but for instance, in this particular case, there can be the issues of lapses by the government officials, right? So we can have the PSC directing the CAG to do a performance audit, which it has done in this particular case also. Members, 22 members, 15 from Lok Sabha, 7 from Rajya Sabha. Do tell me whether the election is direct or indirect. Tell me in the comment section. Chairperson, a Lok Sabha MP, traditionally from the opposition. So convention, it is by convention that we have the chairperson of the committee from the opposition, and that's the reason we have the Congress leader, who is the chairperson of PSC. Terms of 1 year, ministers cannot be members of PSC. Obviously, it's natural to understand that we cannot have ministers because ultimately PSC is making the executive more accountable. Now, what is the importance of the office of CAG in Indian polity? Under Article 148, the Constitution of India provides for the independent office of the Comptroller and Auditor General. When we talk about the CAG, as said by Dr. Ambedkar, it's the most important office which the Constitution makes. He's the guardian of the public purse. He has a lot of powers with him. He basically audits the accounts of the center, the states, the Consolidated Fund of India, the Contingency Fund of India, the Public Accounts of India, different undertakings. So a very, very powerful body, very important, right? CAG is the head of Indian Audit and Accounts Department, guardian of the public purse, and controls the entire financial system of the country at both levels, center as well as the state. What you have to understand is that Ambedkar said that this is going to be the most important office. So, very important. His or her duty is to uphold the Constitution of India and the laws of Parliament in the field of financial administration. He is one of the bulwarks of the democratic systems of the government in India. Now, let's talk about the relation which the PSC has with that of the CAG. The CAG submits 3 audit reports to the President on appropriation accounts, on finance accounts, and on public undertakings. PSC examines the reports of the Comptroller and Auditor General. The President lays these reports before both the houses. The PSC examines these reports and submits its findings to the Parliament. So again, it is a very important function which the PSC is doing. Ensuring the checks and balance, CAG helps the PSC to ensure a check on the government, the executive, especially with respect to its expenditure bill. Ensuring accountability, the CAG assists the PSC in examining these reports. Thus, is a close working relationship between the CAG and the Public Accounts Committee. And it is for that reason we say that the CAG acts as a friend, philosopher, and guide. PSC wants a particular matter to be investigated. right? There has to be a particular study on a matter. So it will direct the CAG, and CAG, on the basis of its technical research and everything, would conduct a research and then submit the report to the PSC. So very important function. And secure the accountability of the executive in the field of financial administration and fiscal federalism. CAG as a guide to PSC. CAG acts as a guide, friend, philosopher. Corrective action. CAG ensures that the corrective action suggested by him has been taken. In cases where it has not been taken, CAG reports the matter to the PSC, which will then take up the matter. Interpreter and translator. CAG acts as the interpreter and the translator, explaining the official's view to the politicians and vice versa. Listing the urgent matter. CAG prepares a list of the most urgent matters with which deserve the attention of the PSC. So what you have to understand is there's a very close coordination mechanism which is established between the PSC and the CAG. CAG is a sort of a research body which conducts the study, then presents a report to the president, and president tables it, the reports in the two houses, and it ultimately goes to the PSC. Then PSC comes with its own findings. And generally what we have seen is whatever the findings of the PSC are, generally it is accepted by the government, right? So this is what you have to understand. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, we have an article which talks about a very important statutory body, and that is the National Human Rights Commission. So we have many of the midday meal workers, the teachers who are not being given the salary. So we have the petition which has been submitted to the NHRC to look into this particular matter. We will see what this NHRC is all about. Now, again, what you have to understand is when we talk about the protection of human rights, when we talk about the watchdog of human rights in India, it is the NHRC, a very important body with respect to the overall protection of human rights in the country. The midday meal workers who have been working at a school in Nuh in Haryana for 10 to 15 years have not been paid for around 10 months, according to a complaint received by the NHRC. Serious violation of the labor rights at the government model Sanskriti Senior Secondary School. He urged the human rights body to investigate the matter urgently. Now here the key word is investigate. So NHRC has the powers to investigate. That is what you have to understand. Direct authorities to release the salaries and ensure such violations do not occur. Now when we talk about the NHRC, as I told you, it's the watchdog of human rights in India. The NHRC is an independent statutory body which has been formed on the basis of a particular law established on October 12, 1993. Under the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993, the Commission serves as a guardian of human rights, overseeing the rights associated with the life, liberty, equality and dignity of individuals. These rights are guaranteed by the Constitution of India and are also reflected in the international covenants like the Paris Principles on Human Rights. See, we have certain rights which are enshrined in the Constitution. So NHRC also makes sure that those rights are protected. Then we also have certain rights which are statutory in nature with respect to the human rights. So it also ensures that those rights are also protected. Now here is a very important thing, Paris Principles. Now what you have to understand is we have these Paris Principles which are a set of standards to be followed by different national human rights bodies. See, national human rights bodies have to be autonomous. Because we can have, and we definitely have these cases of, for example, the custodial violence. Now, if the human rights body is a part of the government, definitely it would not be transparent. It would not be impartial. So what the Paris Principle says that we need to have these bodies which are impartial, which have a distance from the government. The selection procedure should be very specific. So these are the aspects which you must know. Read about the Paris Principles. Also, we have a particular initiative which is the Global Alliance on Human Rights Institutions, GANHRI. Right? So do let me know what is the very objective of this particular body, GANHRI, right? The National Human Rights Commission is a multi-member body, consists of the chairperson and 5 members, each bringing a wealth of experience and expertise to the commissions. Now, let's talk about the composition. So we have full-time members. The chairperson should be either a retired Chief Justice of India or a judge of a Supreme Court. So either a retired Chief Justice of India or a judge of Supreme Court. Members include sitting or retired judge of Supreme Court, sitting or retired Chief Justice of High Court, and 3 individuals, with at least one being a woman who possess knowledge or practical experience, who have basically studied, have been a part of the overall ambit of human rights for a long term of time. 7 ex officio members. Now this is important. You have 5, the permanent members, and 7 ex officio. What it means is that whoever is the chairperson of these bodies, he or she automatically becomes a part of NHRC. So the chairperson of National Commission for Minorities, Scheduled Castes, Scheduled Tribes, Women, Backward Classes, Protection of Child Rights, Persons with Disabilities. So this is what you have to understand. Now, the appointment of chairperson and members of the NHRC is carried by the President of India based on the recommendations of a 6-membered committee. This committee is headed by the Prime Minister and includes the following members: committee is headed by the Prime Minister. We have the Speaker of Lok Sabha and the Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Note, there is no Vice President. It is the Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Leaders of opposition in both the houses and Union Home Minister. Additionally, important point, the appointment of a sitting judge of Supreme Court or a sitting Chief Justice of a High Court requires a prior consultation with the Chief Justice of India. So if you want to appoint a sitting judge, so you'll have to have a prior consultation with the Chief Justice of India. The chairperson and the members of the NHRC serve for a term of 3 years or until they reach the age of 70 years, whichever is earlier. They are eligible for reappointment following the completion of the term. However, once their tenure concludes, neither the chairperson nor the members are permitted to seek further employment with center or state governments. So this is just to make sure that the body is whole independent and it's impartial. Now, functions. The NHRC is entrusted with a variety of functions aimed at promoting and protecting the human rights. These functions include conducting the inquiries or investigation, we just saw in this particular case, into the violations, recommending the measures for improvement and raising awareness about human rights, to inquire into the violation of human rights or negligence in preventing such violations. So it can also look into this aspect, whether the public official was negligent in performing his or her duties or not, right? To intervene in any ongoing court proceedings involving allegations of human rights violations, to visit prisons, and to look into the conditions of the under trials, detention centers, to assess the living conditions of the inmates, to review the constitutional and legal safeguards for the protection of human rights, analyze the factors such as the acts of terrorism that impede the enjoyment of human rights, study the treaties and international human rights instruments or conventions, promote and conduct research, enhance the human rights literacy, support the initiative of NGOs working in this particular domain, undertake any other functions deemed necessary for the promotion of human rights. So it has wide-ranging functions that you have to understand, and do pay attention to the selection committee also. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, we have this particular article which talks about the various initiatives being taken by the Election Commission of India to basically smoothen the process of voting in the country and to make it easy for the voters, right, to cast their votes. So we'll see what different initiatives are all about. The new integrated dashboard developed by the Election Commission is set to become operational during the current round of assembly by-elections and the upcoming Bihar assembly elections. What is this dashboard? The dashboard, named ECI Net, is aimed at providing all services for the stakeholders at single point instead of the over 40 apps or websites that exist now. There have been a tendency which has been there in the UPSC. The UPSC has asked these questions. What does ECI Net refers to, for example, right? So do pay attention. So we have a lot of these websites and differentiated applications. So it is trying to basically come up with a uniform platform, a one single integrated platform. That is what the ECI Net is all about. The ECI Net is among the slew of initiatives taken by the poll body since February to standardize the poll management amid the charges made by opposition parties over the myriad issues ranging from anomalies in the electoral rolls to duplicate the voter ID numbers. Some of the other initiatives taken by the EC since then include the direct integration of death registration data from the Registrar General of India to enable the timely and verified removal of deceased electors. Very important point. From the roles and training of grassroots polling officers to streamline the poll management. Right. Then we have the EC has also revised the maximum number of electors per polling station from 1500 to 1200 so that there's less crowd. Additional polling booths will be established in densely populated areas such as the gated communities and high-rise buildings. The Commission aims to ensuring that no voter is required to travel more than 2 kilometers to vote. Voter information slips have been redesigned for clarity with enhanced visibility of serial and part numbers. Mobile phone deposit facility will also be set up at the entrance of every polling station. The EC has also facilitated 4,719 meetings across the country with participation from over 28,000 political party representatives. So again, as the election conducting body, it has to do these things, but it is making the whole process more smooth. That is what you have to understand. There are other things also, other initiatives. So let's go through them. KYC ECI, a dedicated mobile application containing the information published by the candidates regarding their criminal antecedents. Then we have Suvidha candidates, mobile application for the candidate and political parties to track the status of election permission and nomination. That Encore nodal app, a mobile app that allows the nodal officers to take immediate action, whether objection or no objection. Then we have voter turnout. This simple app provides for 2 hourly basis dissemination of voter turnout trends to the election officers and citizens. Turnout is auto-compiled and when the returning officers enter the data. Next we have the C-Vigil, very, very important. The C-Vigil is an innovative mobile application for citizens to report the model code of conduct and expenditure violations during the elections. Then we have voter helpline, Saksham ECI, which is the application provides all the voter-related services to a person with a disability to its doorstep. Important. Observer, it allows observers to file their statutory reports like their arrival, departure, etc. Then we have ESMS. ESMS mobile app is used to digitize the data for intercepted, seized items, cash, liquor, or other things, direct from the field through the mobile app during model code of conduct. So these are the important initiatives which you must keep in mind. Let's go to the last article. So coming to the last topic of today's discussion, this is with respect to the Shangri La Dialogue. So what the article says is that the Chief of Defence Staff would go and participate in the Shangri La Dialogue. Now, what you have to understand is that these security conferences, for example, we have the Munich Security Conference or the Shangri La Dialogue, or for instance, we have the Raisina Dialogue in India's context. Now, these are very important conferences which bring together the political leaders around the world, the military commanders, the strategic experts who basically deliberate upon the security threats which we are having, various security threats, and who bring together different perspectives. So these are very important in order to basically have a proper view of the world order. That is what you have to understand. Chief of Defence Staff General Anil Chauhan will visit Singapore to attend the 22nd edition of the Shangri La Dialogue, hosted annually by the International Institute of Strategic Studies. Very important. There can be a possible question. Who basically hosts this particular conference? International Institute for Strategic Studies. General Chauhan will hold bilateral meetings with the Chief of Defence Forces and senior military leaderships from different countries. Shangri La Dialogue is Asia's premier defence and security summit that brings together the defence ministers, military chiefs, policymakers, strategic experts across the globe. The event will witness the leaders from 40 nations addressing the Indo-Pacific security challenges. We know that there has been a transition of power from the Atlantic to the Indo-Pacific, and in Indo-Pacific, the Indian Ocean region is the most important. And in Indian Ocean, India is the most important geographical entity. So this naturally becomes important for India. The engagement will provide a platform to strengthen the defense cooperation, discuss mutual security interests, and enhance India's strategic partnership in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, also, let's talk about the Raisina Dialogue. So we have this particular dialogue, which is an Indian initiative, which happened from March 17 to March 19, 2025. It's the India's premier conference on geopolitics and geoeconomics, committed to addressing the most challenging issues facing the global community. Every year, leaders in politics, business, not just restricted to politics, please remember. So we have other leaders also. Business, media, civil society converge in New Delhi to discuss the state of world and explore the opportunities for cooperation on wide range of contemporary matters. The dialogue is structured as a multi-stakeholder, cross-sectoral discussion involving the heads of state, cabinet ministers, local government officials, who are joined by thought leaders from the private sector, media, and academia. The conference is hosted by the Observer Research Foundation, very important, in partnership with the Ministry of External Affairs. The effort is supported by a number of institutions, organizations, and individuals who are committed to the mission of the conference. So this is what you have to understand. That's it for today's discussion. If you enjoyed the discussion, do let us know through your likes and comments. All the very best. Thank you so much.